coming. We're so glad to be hosting you and having you here at Rutgers University in Newark.
I'm humbled to be here.
You may or may not know that partly this event emerged from a series of events that have come off a class that we taught. My colleague Sherri-Ann Butterfield, who is very regretful that she isn't here today, medical appointment, nothing else would have kept her away, but she and I taught a class to around 90 students last fall on the wire. And we've run a series of events this spring that have picked up some of the themes of the wire, but focused on the city of Newark. And you're actually the fourth of the actors who've been at the show who've come to campus, because students invited Idris Elba a couple of years ago, and then Benga Akinagbe was here in October. That's where we went when we met Wendy McKenzie, because she came to meet him. And then Jamie Hector was here in February, and now we are delighted to host you as well. So we'd like to sort of have a conversation both about the wire, your career, and then some of the work on the nonprofit involvement. Roland.
Well, thanks, and again, welcome. It's good to see you. I'd like to start out by asking a question about your character, and I want to juxtapose it to Idris Elba's view of his own character. One of the students asked when he was here, do you miss Stringer Bell? And I thought he would say, yes, he was a complicated character, but allowed me to grow, anything. He said, no, he should have died. He really distanced himself morally from the character, although he inhabited that character so well. And so the question for you is, do you see the same or feel the same moral distance from your character, Omar Little, even though you've inhabited that character so well, it's become a favorite? But do you distance yourself from Omar, or do you feel an affinity for Omar?
I absolutely feel a definite infinity for the character of Omar Devon Little. My process and involvement and relationship with that character was, I guess, much different from Idris's with Stringer Bell. You know, people often say, you know, how much they love that character, how much that character was their favorite out of the other characters, but people seldom stop to think of how dark the state of mind one must have been in to portray a character like that, as I was. My process with Omar was a lot different, I think, than the typical actor-character relationship. Omar was somewhat cathartic for me. I was purging myself of a lot of demon-like energy that I was being plagued with, like my unhappiness, my depression, my anger, of where my life was at as a black man living in the projects in East Flatbush, Brooklyn. There was a drug addiction that I was battling, that I still battle today, but I'm sober now, but it's an everyday struggle. So a lot of those things that I was dealing with, I grew up in a very oppressed environment where I was not made to feel good about my dark skin or the fact that I was sensitive. I grew up in an environment where the alpha male was the one that won. Yes. That was the one that got all the girls, all the ones that didn't get picked on, and I was the exact polar opposite of all of those things. So I had a very painful child life growing up, trying to find my way to fit in. And, as a result of that, I had extremely low self-esteem and a huge need to fit in. And those two things, those formed a recipe for disaster, because I did a lot of things that I should not have done to be accepted. And when I found this guy Omar, it was like, this dude was not me. He was a way to get all that pain and anger and anguish out. This is a man who was openly gay, and dark-skinned, and, you know, not deemed the handsome guy. He didn't care about cars, clothes, money, and he was one of the most, if not the most respected guy in the neighborhood. And I was like, oh man, you know, I think I could dig this dude, you know. And where he would have, where in any other setting, this man would have been made to feel inferior about his sexual identity, you know, where I was made to feel inferior about the fact that I was a sensitive, you know, mild-mannered type of energy growing up in a very male, you know, alpha male-dominated environment. So, you know, that was the first thing that I identified with him, the fact that he was proud and he owned up to who he was, and, you know, I wore that, you know, and then there was the whole thing of his if it's a word, volatileness, what made him volatile. You know, I've had to find out what aspects of that did I identify with, and for me, it was the fact that he was vulnerable. I, you know, grew up being very sensitive, a very sensitive young man, and I mean, still am to this day. And Omar, to me, shared that quality, but his vulnerability turned into anger and rage, whereas my anger and rage was turned inward. You know, I hurt myself, where Omar was like, you hurt me, I'm going to get you. And that was the next thing that I identified with. You know, his dark skin, his lack of education, but still not being stupid. You know, he was far from stupid. And so I had a lot of my life and Omar's life had a lot of parables. And I got crossed. The lines got blurred for me, as, you know, Michael K. Williams was corny. You know, I was the guy who got picked on, and all of a sudden, you know, I'm walking down the street and people are screaming, Omar, we love you. And I was like, that felt better than my real life. And so, you know, these just lines got blurred and gray for me, and I kind of got lost in the character. So my process was a lot different. I actually mourned Omar. I had to purge myself from that character. I had to mourn him. I had to, you know, accept his death as if he was a real person, because that's how close I wore him to my reality.
Would you say you wore him differently over the years that the show was filming? I mean, when you say you had to mourn him, was that only when you were done shooting The Wire, or did you see that coming and know that you had to begin to let go of him? It's so fascinating what you're saying about these parallel lines and the merging of the two.
I definitely knew that Omar's demise would come one day. Did I prepare myself for it? No. It's like, you know, when I don't know. I didn't have the tools, the proper tools to properly deal with that, and I just kind of, you know, I kind of got lost in a haze of drugs and alcohol, and just, you know, I just kind of rode it till the wheels fell off, and when they did, it was metal to metal for me. I crashed and burned, you know. After
you were done?
Yeah, you know, I remember I was in my dressing room the day when we shot the scene, and you know, I had all the makeup on with the bullet wound to the head, and, you know, I was in my dressing room, and, like, it was weird, you know, no one on the set was allowing themselves to go there. It was like, you know, we are not, you know, we are adults, we are professionals, we are not going to mourn this fictitious character. No, okay, action, let's wrap this up. You know, that was the energy, like, no one, and, like, you know, like, but there was an elephant in the room. There was, and you know, so I kind of was going along with that energy, like, hey, Mike, you know, I can handle this, you know, it's okay, so what? Okay, the character show's over, so what? You know, it's good. And I was in my dressing room, and it just hit me. I was like, oh, and I was paralyzed. I just sat there at the vanity mirror, and I was just like, oh my God, you know. And one of the ladies from wardrobe, Donna, she came in. It was something. She was like, you know, Mike, you know, I got some stuff. And she looked at me. She put down the stuff. She said, we ain't going there today, Mike. And she shook me. She shook me, said, we're not going there today. We're not going there. That's all she said. We are not going there today. And that was all I needed to hear to get me through the rest of the day of filming. But, you know, I crashed, you know, when that show was over, and I didn't have that character to hide behind anymore. You know, I was forced to I was forced to go back to being Michael. And that was when the work began for me, the personal journey began for me. You know, I had to crash and burn, and I had to begin healing myself and growing up. You know, I had to realize that a lot of things I had to stop doing, and other things I had to begin doing. And, you know, it was a painful process, but one that was very necessary for me to be here today.